B implies C, then A implies C, etc., etc. Okay, you use these rules. Okay, so basically you can describe a proof as some kind of dynamical process. Okay, and you ask the question of accessibility. For instance, you have theorems, okay, and you want to know if you can prove this theorem or not. Okay, you have some kind of proposition which is true, and you want to prove that it is true. And the only way to do so in math is to give a proof. That means a path from the axiom to the theorem. Okay, and the natural question is whether every true proposition are accessible by this way or not. Okay, will I be able to write a proof for every true theorem? So that's the first question. And there is another one, which is whether math are coherent, in the sense, how can I ensure that I will never prove something wrong this way? Okay, so these are basically the two questions that were asked by Hilbert. Okay, so basically what is nice with math is that you're working on something abstract. Okay, you construct everything. Okay, you construct, you just put everything in place. This is your place, this is not nature's. You know everything, you've settled the axioms, you settled everything. So you would like these two things to be true. Okay, that would be the least, you're in control of everything. Okay, and it turns out that no. No is the answer to both of these questions. I mean that there are theorems that you will not be able to prove. Okay, and also we won't be able to prove that math are coherent. Okay, but it may turn out that someday we discovered that math are not coherent. Okay, but it may as well turn out that they are coherent, and we'll never know. Okay, so this is quite disturbing. Okay, and this is a much deeper problem than just not knowing all the digits for the initial condition. Okay, this is a real structural problem. Okay, so how does the proof work? So it's not that hard. Okay, so it starts with something which is quite trivial now with numerical systems, is the fact that you can encode any sentence in an integer. Okay, so and the key here for Gödel is to encode it arithmetically. So what do I mean by that? So you can replace every letter by a number. Okay, every letter you can replace it by a number. You just take the ASCII code or whatever. Okay, you just use this order in the alphabet. Okay, and you get the number for each letter. Okay, so how do you encode two numbers into one? So there is a very beautiful thing, is that you just use this order. So you have x and y, and you want to encode x and y into one number. So what you want to do is just to start from 0 here and just go this way along the path, and you count the number of nodes you cross, and this is the number. Okay? This is clearly a bijection between integers and pairs of integers. Okay? And it turns out that you can express this as a polynomial. Okay? So you can give a polynomial expression to that. Okay? And because of that, you can basically encode any finite sequence into an arithmetic formula. Okay? So what's going on is that because of that, you can find a proposition. You can write down a proposition, a logical proposition, that just asks the question whether a given computation terminates. So we will get in more detail what I mean by computation. But basically, the idea is the following: is that computation is local actions on memory. Okay, and since you will work for a finite time, you will only use a finite memory. Okay, so everything is finite. You will have to handle only finite sequences. Okay, and you have only local actions on the sequences. So basically, using this encoding, you can find a formula that will say if the computation is at every step correct. So since the action is local, it's just a local operation that you can describe using arithmetics. Okay, and the computation is correct, and terminate. So you can write it as a logical proposition. And basically, you obtain this way a theorem that says that will be true if and only if the computation terminates. Okay, and you can write it. I mean, you can really write the theorem down. And what turns out is that we will see that later. Is that it turns out that it is not possible to decide whether a program will terminate or not. So a consequence of that is that we have written a theorem that we cannot decide, and as a consequence, we cannot prove it. But we know it's true or false. We don't know, but we know that it's a theorem, and we know that some of them are true, but we know that we won't be able to prove them. Okay, so it's quite disturbing. So we are able to write it down. So that's the interesting part. Is that this guy was able to write down a theorem, a sequence of theorems, among which there are some true, some false. Okay, but we are unable to prove them. We can prove, but we cannot prove. Okay, so this is quite disturbing, and so a corollary of that is that math is not complete, in the sense that there are theorems that are true that we cannot prove. Okay, so it's even worse in the sense that if we were able to prove that math will never lead to contradiction, okay, we could solve the problem, because how could we do? We just add the theorem that we don't know whether it's true or false to the axioms, okay, and we test whether the new system is coherent. If it's coherent, then the theorem is necessarily true. If it's not coherent, then the theorem is necessarily false. Okay, so if math were coherent, if we were able to prove that we will never prove something wrong, we were able to prove that, and this is not the case. Okay, so what's basically, now forget about everything I said. Okay, and what's basically the conclusion is that as soon as we manipulate integers, as soon as we have arithmetics in a mathematical system, then there are theorems that we cannot prove. So that's a big issue. I mean, that's a much bigger issue than just not knowing the initial configuration. That means that, for instance, you may want to prove something on your dynamical systems, but you know it's true because you feel it. But it turns out that you cannot prove it. Okay, so that's a much bigger issue. So you have to be very careful. So the nice thing is that, the Gödel systems with arithmetics and everything was quite messy. I mean, nobody could understand it, and it's fairly hard to enter into it, and it's hard to see how it's related to computation and everything. So there was a guy, a British guy, Turing, who found the right model. I mean, a model which is at the same time very nice to manipulate theoretically, completely inefficient in practice, but that allow to think about computers the way we think of them now. I mean that this guy, when he introduced his model, it was the first step that allowed to think about computers, an efficient way to build computers. Okay, so what's the whole idea? His idea of what a computer is now called a Turing machine, and basically what you have a tape. Okay, so there is a concept in computer science which is finite but not bounded. So that's a very important concept. It's not infinite. Okay, it's finite but unbounded. I mean that you can have as many resources as you want, but at any point you will only have a finite number of resources. Okay, this is very important for two reasons. First, if you had infinite resources at the beginning, then basically, if you have an infinite sequence of 0 and 1s, you have real numbers. Okay, so it's a much bigger set than finite sequences. Finite sequences, it's only a countable set. Okay, so it's much bigger. And second, if you don't have access to unbounded resources, then you have very limited resources. You cannot do nothing. Okay, why? Because if you have